Imagine waking up to the sound of rain. Not for a single morning. Not for a week. But for so long that the ground beneath your feet never truly dries. Every step sinks into mud. Every fallen tree drips with water. Thick clouds hide the sun, and the air itself feels cold and heavy. Now imagine facing that world without a waterproof roof, without rubber boots, without raincoats, without matches to relight a fire, and without knowing when the storm might finally end. For most of us, rain is little more than an inconvenience. It delays a journey, cancels a picnic, or leaves us searching for an umbrella. But for ancient humans, relentless rain could become a fight for survival. A soaked animal hide could no longer keep a person warm. A flooded shelter could force an entire family into the open. Wet firewood could make it nearly impossible to cook food or stay warm through a freezing night. Rivers that once provided water and fish could suddenly become violent barriers, sweeping away anything in their path. And yet, our ancestors survived. Not just for days. Not just for seasons. They endured countless generations through changing climates that challenged every part of their lives. How? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. Perhaps they simply waited for the rain to stop. But archaeology tells a very different story. Long before cities, long before farming, and even before written history, humans lived through dramatic environmental changes. Some regions became wetter for centuries. Rivers shifted course. Lakes expanded. Forests spread into places that had once been open grasslands. In other places, powerful seasonal rains transformed entire landscapes, creating opportunities as well as dangers. These weren't changes that affected one village or one generation. They reshaped the world our ancestors called home. Scientists have uncovered clues hidden deep inside cave formations, ancient lake sediments, ice cores, fossil pollen, and layers of soil buried beneath thousands of years of history. Together, these records reveal that Earth's climate has never stood still. But there's an even bigger mystery. If the environment changed so dramatically, why didn't humanity disappear? Many powerful animals did. Woolly mammoths vanished from most of the world. Giant ground sloths disappeared. Saber-toothed cats faded into extinction. Even species closely related to us, like the Neanderthals, eventually vanished. Yet Homo sapiens endured. Was it because we were stronger, faster, better hunters? Surprisingly, the evidence points somewhere else. Our greatest advantage wasn't our muscles. It wasn't our speed. It was our ability to adapt. But adapting to relentless rain required solving one problem after another. How do you stay warm when everything around you is soaked? How do you protect the one thing you cannot afford to lose? Fire. That simple question may have determined whether entire families lived or died. And solving it would become one of humanity's greatest achievements. If you're enjoying this journey so far, a quick like helps Hidden Origin uncover more incredible stories. For ancient humans, losing a fire wasn't simply an inconvenience. It could mean losing everything. Today, if the rain puts out our stove or leaves us in the dark, we flip a switch or strike a match. Our ancestors had neither luxury. Making fire was difficult, time-consuming, and in some cases, nearly impossible under wet conditions. A single flame meant warmth. It meant protection from predators lurking beyond the darkness. It meant cooked food that was safer to eat. It meant drying wet clothing and animal hides after hours spent in the rain. When fire died, survival suddenly became much harder. But here's something that archaeologists and anthropologists have discovered. Ancient humans didn't simply wait until they needed fire to think about protecting it. They planned for it. Many prehistoric groups were remarkably resourceful. Evidence from archaeological sites across different parts of the world suggests that humans carefully selected where they lived, often choosing caves, rock shelters, or elevated areas that offered natural protection from harsh weather conditions. When caves weren't available, they built temporary shelters using materials provided by their environment. And those shelters were far more sophisticated than most people imagine. For decades, popular culture portrayed prehistoric humans as little more than cave dwellers wrapped in animal skins. But discoveries from sites dating back tens of thousands of years paint a very different picture. Ancient humans understood their surroundings exceptionally well. They knew how water flowed across the landscape. They knew which materials provided insulation and which quickly became unusable when wet. Branches could be layered to help divert rainwater. Animal hides could serve as protective coverings. In some regions, large leaves, bark, grasses, and even mud were used as part of shelter construction. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence suggesting that prehistoric communities built structures designed specifically for the environments they inhabited. They weren't merely surviving nature. They were learning how to work with it. But even the best shelter could not solve every problem. Rain creates an enemy that many people never think about: cold. When clothing remains wet for long periods, the human body loses heat much faster. In cold and wet environments, hypothermia can become deadly, even at temperatures that might not seem particularly extreme. So how did ancient humans stay warm? Animal hides played an important role, especially when properly prepared. Scientists believe prehistoric people developed techniques for scraping, drying, and preserving hides long before recorded history. These materials provided insulation and helped protect against harsh weather conditions. Combined with fire and well-constructed shelters, they significantly increased the chances of survival. And survival was rarely a one-person job. One of humanity's greatest evolutionary advantages wasn't intelligence alone, it was cooperation. Imagine a night of relentless rain falling outside a shelter. Someone gathers dry kindling stored beneath a rock overhang. Another tends the glowing embers of the fire. Others repair weak sections of the shelter before water begins to leak inside. No single individual carried the burden of survival alone. Humans survived because they learned something that many of the strongest animals never could: we're better together. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. If you had to survive 1 month of relentless rain using only Stone Age technology, what would you protect first? Your fire, your shelter, or your food? Let me know in the comments. I read your comments, and some of your ideas may even inspire future hidden origin documentaries. But protecting fire and staying warm were only the beginning. Rain creates another problem that may have been even more dangerous than the weather itself. Because what happens when the animals you're hunting disappear? What do you eat when the rivers overflow and the landscape you've always known is suddenly unrecognizable? That question may have forced ancient humans to become some of the greatest problem solvers in Earth's history. Rain doesn't just make survival uncomfortable. Sometimes, it changes the world around you. Imagine spending your entire life hunting in a familiar landscape. You know where animals migrate. You know which plants are safe to eat. You know where fresh water can be found. Your survival depends on understanding every corner of your environment. Then, slowly, the rain begins to change everything. The river that once provided fish grows wider and more dangerous. The dry path your ancestors used for generations becomes a swamp. Animals begin moving elsewhere, following new sources of food and shelter. Even the plants around you are no longer the same. For ancient humans, climate wasn't simply background scenery. It was one of the most powerful forces shaping their lives. Scientists studying ancient climates have discovered that rainfall patterns have changed dramatically throughout human history. During different periods, some regions became significantly wetter while others became drier. Entire ecosystems transformed over time, forcing both animals and humans to adapt or move. In fact, one of the greatest survival skills our ancestors ever developed wasn't hunting or toolmaking. It was flexibility. Unlike many animals that depend on a very specific environment to survive, humans learn to adapt to almost anything. Dense forests, open grasslands, cold mountains, coastal regions, and yes, even landscapes shaped by relentless rain. When hunting became difficult, ancient humans didn't simply give up. Archaeological evidence suggests that prehistoric communities often had remarkably diverse diets. Depending on where they lived, they gathered fruits, nuts, roots, shellfish, fish, insects, and edible plants. Some groups became highly skilled at exploiting seasonal resources that other animals ignored. Rain could make hunting more difficult, but it could also create opportunities. Overflowing rivers sometimes brought fish into shallow waters. Wet seasons encouraged the growth of edible plants in certain regions. Forests supported entirely different food sources than open plains. Our ancestors weren't merely surviving their environment, they were constantly learning from it. And perhaps one of their greatest strengths was their willingness to move when necessary. Many people imagine ancient humans living in the same place for generations. In reality, prehistoric people were often highly mobile. When resources became scarce or environmental conditions changed dramatically, migration became one of humanity's most powerful survival strategies. Human history is, in many ways, a story of movement. Our ancestors crossed mountains, followed coastlines, survived ice ages, and adapted to changing climates over tens of thousands of years. Rain didn't always trap them in one place. Sometimes, it pushed them toward entirely new opportunities. Some of the greatest journeys in human history may never have happened if our ancestors had refused to adapt when the environment changed around them. This ability to innovate and migrate helped Homo sapiens spread across nearly every continent on Earth. And yet, there is one mystery we haven't answered. Rain doesn't simply threaten your shelter or your food supply. It threatens something even more important. Your community. What happens when rivers flood? When children become vulnerable to the cold? When resources become difficult to find? Could ancient humans have survived relentless rain alone? The archaeological and anthropological evidence points to a fascinating answer. Humanity's greatest survival tool may never have been fire, clothing, or even intelligence. It may have been each other. Perhaps the biggest misconception about ancient humans is that they spent their lives fighting against nature. The truth is far more fascinating. For hundreds of thousands of years, nature was their greatest teacher. Every storm taught them something. Every flooded river forced them to adapt. Every season of relentless rain tested not only their physical strength but also their ability to think, cooperate, and prepare for what came next. In many ways, surviving wasn't about being the strongest human in the group. It was about being the most adaptable. Modern science increasingly supports the idea that environmental challenges played a major role in shaping human behavior throughout our evolutionary history. Researchers have proposed that rapidly changing environments favored individuals and communities that could innovate, communicate effectively, and work together. Rain itself did not make us human. But the challenges created by changing climates, including prolonged wet periods in different parts of the world, rewarded the very qualities that allowed Homo sapiens to thrive. Think about it for a moment. A single person can build a shelter. But a community can improve it. A single person can protect a fire. But a community can ensure it never goes out. A single person may struggle to find food during difficult times. But a community can share knowledge gathered over generations. The more archaeologists uncover about our ancestors, the clearer one thing becomes. Humanity did not survive because we conquered nature. We survived because we learned how to live within it. There is also something surprisingly modern about the way ancient humans approached survival. They planned ahead. They observed patterns in their environment. They stored useful materials. They passed knowledge from one generation to the next. They adapted their tools, their shelters, and even their movements based on changing conditions. These are not merely survival skills. They are the foundations of civilization itself. The ability to prepare for tomorrow may be one of the oldest human traditions on Earth. So, the next time you're caught in an unexpected downpour and rush indoors, consider this. There was a time when rain determined whether entire communities would eat, stay warm, or survive the night. And yet, against overwhelming odds, our ancestors endured. Before we reach the end of today's mystery, I'd like to ask you one final question. Which ancient human survival skill do you admire most? Adaptability, cooperation, innovation, or resilience? Share your answer in the comments below. I read your comments, and they help shape the mysteries we'll explore next on Hidden Origin. If you're enjoying these deep dives into humanity's forgotten past, consider subscribing to Hidden Origin. We're only scratching the surface of the incredible story of where we came from, and how we survived long enough to tell it. Relentless rain may have flooded ancient landscapes, extinguished countless fires, and forced humans to abandon places they once called home. But it also revealed something extraordinary about our species. When the world changed, we changed with it. That may be humanity's greatest survival story of all. Because in the end, ancient humans didn't survive relentless rain by defeating nature. They survived by understanding it, adapting to it, and facing it together. Every question has an answer. If this documentary has changed the way you see history, like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Hidden Origin for more incredible discoveries.